So, as I've mentioned a couple of times, I am in the late stages of having written a novel, and that means that my TikTok feed is full of book talk. And as such, I've been exposed to a side of literary subculture that I have next to no familiarity with, and that is the subculture surrounding spicy novels. I haven't read any spicy novels. It's not what interests me as a reader or writer. Sorry for anyone looking forward to my book. But by the way, side note, if you're interested in the book I'm writing, it's not spicy, but I'll put a link in the description to my Beehive account where you will be notified when my book comes out, so you don't have to rely on YouTube notifications. Anyways, I digress. I have assigned the preparation for this one to my team. It's an uncomfortable ask, so I'm just gonna dive in the deep end here, but my mission is to be a character designer in a way that feels justified from the text of the novels. Our first character, Rhysand. From A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Standing before me. I don't know what sort of voice. Is she English? American. Standing before me was the most beautiful man I'd ever seen. Everything about the stranger radiated sensual grace and ease. Okay, what does he look like? High fae. Okay, that helps. His short black hair gleamed like raven's feathers, offsetting his pale skin and blue eyes, so deep they were violet. I think blue changes to purple when you make it darker. Anyway. Even in the firelight, they twinkled with amusement as he beheld me. His clothes, all black, all finely made, were cut close enough to his body that I could see how magnificent he was, as if he had been molded from the night itself. The man's remarkable eyes seemed to glow with enough of a deadly edge that I backed up a step. Ooh, a bad boy. Bet you can fix him. Sorry. I've got my description. Let's see if I can paint Rhysand in a way that some of you ladies who read this book can get into. Now, for Rhysand, obviously, I'm going to be going with a fairly slender, sort of elongated, elven-ish face. He is a high fae. I don't know what that means. Like, I don't know if he's meant to have wings or something. Fae is sort of like fairy-ish, and I guess I'm just sort of drawing an elf, but I don't know. So I've just gone with very pointy ears. Hopefully that's fae enough. For short black hair, which is described as gleaming like raven's feathers, I have it all sort of slicked back a little bit so it can gleam, but also have it sort of jutting out at the back in a bird-like way. And of course I need to make sure that the anatomy is all drawn with care because his clothes are close enough to his body that we can see how magnificent he is. So we need to draw that magnificence first and then slap some clothes on top, but not just any clothes, finely made clothes. And when it comes to color, he's got pale skin, deep blue eyes that are so deep they're velvet, but they're also twinkle with amusement as he beholds the protagonist. I'm trying to balance this look of amusement and sensual grace and ease with apparently a deadly edge. Sort of trying to tick a few slightly juxtaposing boxes at once, but I'm feeling like I'm doing a pretty decent job. With everything blocked in, I'm going to get Alicia's help to bring his sensual grace to life and just remind my dear viewers that I'm dragging my studio into this smutty video. With Murray, Benny and Amy helping prepare this smut and with Alicia helping me polish it off in a way that hopefully you find just as alluring as the text. So what I have asked my team to do is to find a paragraph or two of some raunchy text from the novel for me to read, which will be censored in as much as it needs to be for this video to be family friendly. I've never read this stuff and I'm just curious to read it and you can see how that sits with me. So this is a scene from A Court of Thorns and Roses. His kissing was slower this time, gentler. I sucked in a breath. This is so weird. With one long claw, he shredded through silk and lace. Silk and lace? That sounds expensive. He paused again, but I grabbed him. I wanted him now. Don't stop, I guess. Okay, that's enough. Smut is Why have I just realized? All right, our next character is from Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yaros. Violet Sorengale. We're reading a description of ourselves. I'm too short, too frail. What curves I do have should be muscle. She picks up the end of my long braid, scoffs at the section just above my shoulders where the brown strands start to lose their warmth of color and slowly fade to a steely metallic silver by the ends. Pale skin, pale eyes, pale hair. Her gaze siphons every ounce of my confidence. It's like that fever stole all your coloring along with your strength. My eyes are just as indecisive, a light hazel of varying blues and ambers that never seem to favor either actual color. I think this is the protagonist, because it's like people talking about her or her talking about herself. Maybe. I don't know. Then she laces me into a vest-style corset over the shirt. The combination of leather and fabric I don't recognize covers me from my collarbone to just below my waist, wrapping over my breasts and crossing up over my shoulders. I finger the hidden sheaths sewn diagonally along my rib cage. For your daggers. Now I know why I haven't read smut novels. Because I'm a child. That is Violet Sorengale. We've got some descriptors, so let's see if we can bring it to life. Now, there's not a huge amount of key features that stands out of this character, aside from hair that seems to go into a metallic silver by the end of this long braid. So I've posed her in a way where you can sort of see the braid hanging over and down her back, and she's sort of turning to face us. I believe this is the protagonist, or whoever we read the novel through the eyes of. It's a bit hard to tell because the pieces of text that reference the appearance seem to be gathered from various perspectives. But aside from the brown hair that fades to silver and hazel eyes of indistinct colors, the only other real descriptor that we're given of her is that she's short, somewhat frail, and wearing a bunch of like layers of leather and straps and like a vest corset thingy with daggers sewn in at angles along the rib cage. I'm definitely getting Katniss Everdeen vibes, but as I start working in the color, I'm starting to get a little bit more an independent feel for this character. I like the look. I'm actually really happy with how she's turned out, and I think she looks pretty cool, especially as I start to work in a little bit more of the subtlety. And then, with Alicia's help, all that polish that transforms my concept piece into, hopefully, a fitting representation of Violet Sorengale from Fourth Wing. Now let's read some spice, shall we? Need streaks down my spine as he takes my and hauls me a. You don't really want this. Making his way to my ear, he bites the lobe. I tilt my head, giving him better access. He takes it. He glides the fabric of mud. Can't even read this out loud. It's hot and hard and... I'm done. I think I was done a while ago. Fourth Wing? I've seen that cover everywhere. You people are filthy, vile. Now we're halfway through. I'm going to switch it up a little bit and make a confession. I am actually a romance novel cover artist. I'm actually not kidding. 12 years ago, which is barely after I started this YouTube channel, I was dead broke. These are all my commission jobs for that year. One of my clients was a romance novel author and wanted me to illustrate their book cover. I don't know who the author was. I don't know what the book is. I haven't looked at it in a very long time. This was the sketch I did for what would become the cover. So then this was like the second sketch, and then this is the final book cover. It's pretty terrible. It was the best I could do, but God, it's so cartoony. Unless that was the vibe. She's got a Jessica Rabbit thing going on. I don't know. Could have been like the smuttiest thing ever, and I apparently took part in it. I don't know, but here it is. I'm not a fan of my own illustration, but it's fun to flash back, and I thought you would find this amusing, because I do. And had completely forgotten. Anyways, let's get back to it with something you're definitely familiar with. I mean, everyone's heard of 50 Shades of Grey. And credit has to be given to E.L. James for having popularized smut. All right, so Christian Grey from 50 Shades. So young and attractive, very attractive. He's tall, dressed in a fine grey suit, white shirt and black tie, with unruly dark copper-colored hair and intense bright grey eyes that regard me shrewdly. Is that shrewd? Am I pulling off shrewd? His voice is warm, possibly amused, but it's difficult to tell him his... But why do I sound like South Park character? But it's difficult to tell from his impassive expression. He looks mildly interested, but above all, polite. When I pluck up the courage to look at him, he's watching me, one hand relaxed in his lap, the other cupping his chin and trailing his long index finger across his lips. I think he's trying to suppress a smile. So there's not a lot of interesting visuals with this one. It's like generic office guy. Attractive dude from accounting. Let's see if Christian Grey is all he's cracked up to be. It's interesting. Attractiveness is completely subjective. So while our protagonist describes him as so young and attractive, very attractive, like this is to her. I'm just drawing a guy in a grey suit with like hopper brown hair, and he's described in a pose that I can't help but feel just seems so unnatural, and I'm gonna try and see if I can make it look realistic. I don't know the context of this pose. Like I feel like he's in a boardroom meeting and just like ignoring the presentation and gazing across the room at the protagonist and just like rubbing his lips with his finger. Hello. Oh my God. By the way, I in no way mean to shame anyone who enjoys a little bit of spice in their novels. Obviously, this is entirely out of my comfort zone and familiarity wheelhouse, but that's kind of why I thought it'd be a fun area to romp in for the sake of art. And as someone who grew up in an extremely conservative household and has since obviously loosened up a lot on a lot of this stuff, it's still just an area that is so beyond my familiarity that it's just quite fun and uncomfortable to sort of step into, and I hope you're enjoying this weird journey with me. With that said, here is the ever seductive and powerful, wealthy Christian Grey. All right, now's the time that I finally read some 50 Shades of Grey. Let's see how many shades I can get through. Oh! Turning to face him, my mouth drops open. I glance up at him and come face to face with his wicked grin. That was inside. I don't know how we're gonna clean up this video for a general audience. He wants me to touch him. Okay, bring it on. Very deliberately, I gently bite my bottom lip and then run my tongue across it. That's how I picture it. My inner goddess is thrilled. I can do this. I can. All right, we're done. I've read enough of 50 Shades of Grey. So moving on, I have one more. This is one of those videos where the idea for like the hook, they're like, I draw the smut characters. Read a little smut, maybe I'll blush. It's weirder when you're doing it. Definitely having like a lot of doubts as I'm recording this video. But I'm powering through it because I think you clicked on it because you want to see me uncomfortable, right? Or you're big fans of this. Interview with a Vampire, written by Anne Rice, in which we're going to be depicting the final character, Lars de Lioncourt. I'm going to go British with this one. I don't know if it's based in England, but let's switch it up. He was utterly white and smooth. Oh boy, as if he was sculpted from bleached bone. And his face was as seemingly intimate as a statue, except for two brilliant green eyes that looked down at the boy intently like flames in a skull. It's an interview with a vampire. Is this a vampire being interviewed? I'm picturing gaunt and sort of bony. Not that way. But then the vampire smiled almost wistfully, and the smooth white substance of his face moved with the infinitely flexible but minimal lines of a cartoon? Is it a cartoony character? I don't understand that description. His eyes moved slowly over the finely tailored black coat he'd only glimpsed in the bar. The long folds of the cape, the black silk tie knotted at the throat, and the gleam of the white collar that was as white as the vampire's flesh. He stared at the vampire's full black hair, the waves that were combed back over the tips of the ears, and the curls that barely touched the edge of the white collar. Okay, a little more to work with here, so let's see if Lars de Lioncourt is brought to life through my art. I start off with, your basic structure and loosely sketched in a skull underneath that I can sort of use to embed some of the features a little more sharply into his face, and then otherwise move forward into creating his pose and his costume. With that said, one thing I've really found similar with all of the characters that I've done is that they're really quite vaguely described. It reminds me of Bo Burnham's song Repeat Stuff, which is a sort of a rip on Justin Bieber and pop songs that vaguely describe the perfect love interest in such a way that anyone could imagine them in their shoes.
I love your hands cause your fingerprints are like no other. I love your eyes and they're bluish, brownish, greenish color.
There's just something about all these romance love interests that's vague enough that I think as a reader you can kind of just put features of someone or something you're attracted to in there pretty easily. With that said, I'm happy with how this is coming out. I'm trying to walk that balance between making him look vampire-y in a traditional sense, but also young and attractive in the romance novel sense. And if you have read Interview with a Vampire, I hope that you think my Lars de Lioncourt does him justice. That's 4. I've done 4. Okay, is that enough? My eyes have been opened. I feel like I'm no longer an innocent man. Instead, I'm wistful and shrewd. Has anyone ever met anyone like anything remotely like this in real life? No. But that's also why people haven't met like Hagrid or Dumbledore in real life. Because sometimes it's fun to imagine things. And I think some people are having a lot more fun with their imagination than I expected. Power to ya. I'm gonna keep reading and writing about like space warriors and explosions and zombies and all that sort of thing. But this has been a fun frolic into a world that I am happy to leave to the people who dwell in it. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.